I start with my deep appreciation for the organizers for giving me a chance to be able to speak in a conference, in a meeting of, I think, a very high standard, and which is actually turning a new leaf into literature on management. As you can see on the opening page of my presentation, what I'm going to talk to you is about extremely small things. The essence of my paper is disaggregation, because you have to break big jargons into simple words. You have to break big philosophies into understandable literature. And I'm glad I'm standing on this land of Varanasi to be doing it. And this is a place where you all know that Tulsidas did the disaggregation with Valmiki's Ramayana, and most of us talk about Ram because he made it understandable. This word became understandable only on this land. Otherwise, it was trapped in very, very few knowledgeable people who were controlling the whole society in the name of Hinduism. The background idea of this paper is that jargon and big philosophies that are in the backside of management theory create a sense of arrogance amongst few. And through the use of that arrogance, isms are created, and because of these isms, power gangs are created which prevent new ideas from coming in. So there is never a whip of fresh air once the management theory is printed. And you know it very well with the experience in the 1990s. You know the Washington Consensus, through which came up the new public management approach. There were few people, few economists, led by James Williamson's. You must be consulting James Williamson's and Oliver Williamson's management books, which are like Ramcharitmanas for the management students. Now, James Williamson's leadership led to the creation of new public management. The new public management baggage was immediately implanted on the poor land of Somalia and the sub-Saharan Africa, and you know the story aftermath of that, that earlier they were getting some food to eat. After that, they did not get any food to eat. They starved, there was famine, there were war breakups, civil war and whatnot, and they started killing each other. Children were killed to produce meat. That was the situation that was the aftermath of implementing a new management theory. So then what is wrong with management? This is what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure whether I would be able to speak it in a manner as well as the spiritual guru said, but I'll try my best to convey my idea to you. This is where I have, how many of us actually notice that how many of these worms have disappeared from the leaves and the gardens. They are no more. Of course, 30 years ago, as kids, we had played with them, we had nurtured them, and we had fed them, not realizing that they are the basis of economy. If some of you got the privilege of reading Rachel Carson in the 60s, you would know that she only talked about the loss of butterflies and caterpillars and worms, and she got so terrified because she was a scientist and she was working on insecticide and pesticides, and she was employed in a chemical company. And when she found out that the use of chemicals and pesticides, insecticides, the kind of chemical manures which are being used for producing and maximizing all the products of land, it is these little creatures who are the first casualties, and they are also an indicator that humans are not going to survive if these are killed. So this is the first indication. Now nobody notices these indications because they are maximizing the produce to increase the GDP and the GNP of nations, and this indication is where I'm trying to get back to. Now, in this situation, we know that, let's go back to the Pacific, Asia Pacific at the verge of environmental disaster. 150 unique types of organisms are estimated to go extinct every day. Then today, a large number of species are being lost. Now, what I have mentioned here is that 1 degree warming, global warming, is going to result in an average of, you can read the number of percentage of species which are going to get lost. But in the next 10 years, the temperature is likely to rise by more than 1 degree. So how many of the species are going to get lost? We are already facing food insecurity, food crisis, and you must have, and if you haven't, you should read the book by Utsa Patnaik, The Republic of Hunger, that our country is. Sorry, will you change the slide? Huh. Now, similar thing is with water. Now, these 2 photographs are real photographs from Gurgaon Sultanpur Lake, which provides water to the whole cyber city. I come from the city, and this is a city which is the vision of development, new kind of capitalistic neoliberal philosophy development in this country. It is also called the San Jose of India, because all the San Jose companies have migrated to Gurgaon. Now, this lake was the only provider of water to the city, and last year, this lake had no water. There were so many protests that went on, and then these 2 photographs were sent to the minister, and minister within 2 days got gallons of water released into the lake, and now the lake will not get dry because it is getting continuous supply of water by the government. But the insensitivity that people who are 9 to 5 stuck up in a job, they return back home and they find that they have to fight for water, for these little species, for fish, for animals, for trees. This is not a sensible republic if it actually has to happen like that. So what I've mentioned here is that there are trans-boundary basins of all the rivers, Ganges, Brahmaputra, Meghna, or you take up any of the river basins, they are actually sullage. All the city effluents are discharged into the basins which are getting destroyed. And in fact, some of our foreign guests today, they said that Ganga is not really completely clean because they saw dead animal waste in the river. Now, if this is what we are managing our rivers, then actually we have no reason to call ourselves river worshippers. Then Asia is presently a crucible of change and a region of turbulence. You see that house which is being brought down. In China, a colleague of mine, she returned to her house after 3 months of fellowship in Harvard. When she was there, she said, I didn't realize, without informing me, my house was taken away. And she was rehabilitated somewhere else at the backyard of the city. And this is the kind of demolition which is taking place to implant a Western model over these regions. Well, I would, in that case, compare it with Australia. Australia has actually not demolished a large number of these houses. They have beautified it. And if you browse the net, you would also see that in Brazil, a large number of slums have been beautified by the artists. Managers, management institute people have come forward and they have designed new ideas that the same slum can have a better appearance from outside. They would not be treated as people who are excluded. They can also not be treated as people who are very low class people, but they are people who have their very special characteristic, a heritage site. And this is something that only management institute people can think of. Then there is this very good poem I would like to read out for you. This actually explains, Kenneth Balding's Ballad on Ecological Awareness, which he wrote in 1972, that created the Earth Day anguish. And thousands of people came out in America and Britain to protest that we have to protect our earth. Every religion takes you back to nature. And this is what we have to protect, which is the epistemology of every religion. There are benefits, of course, which may be countable, but which have a tendency to fall into the pockets of the rich. while the costs are apt to fall upon the shoulders of the poor. So cost-benefit analysis is nearly always sure. This is what we design management over, cost and benefit analysis. So cost-benefit analysis is nearly always sure to justify the building of a solid concrete fact, while the truth is left behind in the abstract. The truth is never approachable because truth is not in those big words, big jargons. Truth is always in very simple facts. Then globalization has become a gutter of wealth. Wealth is important, but it is not everything in life, because if wealth was everything in life, then the San Jose of India, which is Gurgaon, managers of Convergys, Sapient, Microsoft, Genpact, they would not be coming out in the evening, filling their dickies of their cars with buckets of food and going around distributing it to cows and dogs. Okay, test of values. In Delhi and surrounding regions, very, very educated people have formed groups to protect the cows and the monkeys. And they have extended this to Vrindavan and Mathura, because management is not about man and the wealth management. Management is about managing these simple things, because if they create problems, you have to protect them. So there are various groups which are coming out, and lots of battles have been fought in the Supreme Court, and some very good judgments have come out in the last 3 years, out of which some judgments I will just tell you, and you can browse the net of the Animal Welfare Board of India and Ministry of Environment and Forest and find it out for yourself. One is that to feed an animal who's a stray, it's the right of every Indian citizen. And people who scornfully look at people who come out and feed the dogs and protect the cows, these are people who need not be citizens of India, because the Indian philosophy is rooted into caring for the basic epistemological wealth of this country, which is these. And you can, I'm just, demonstrating some real photographs where people have come out, journalists, professors from universities, managers from very high international companies. They've come out. In fact, there was dog meat which was being supplied to Korean restaurants in Delhi, and they found out, and all these people, 2,000 people within half an hour surrounded the gates of Delhi Jal Board, and they did Havan in front of it. Then the Christians came forward, the Christian priest did the prayers, then a Maulvi ji came forward and even he did the prayers, and we said that we have come to purify you, because you will continue to kill the dogs, but we will continue to bless them for the next life and try to protect them. We are creating fears like this so that people become happier in their homes for better understanding of what life is meaning about or indicating to. In fact, these police people were, the protesters were about 1,000, 2,000, including, Hiranmai Karlekar and lots of top people who are heading the biggest newspapers and biggest companies in this country. They were out at Connaught Place, and the police exceeded the numbers of the protesters. And then there were some people who came out and told the police that you are not different from us. We are just fighting for something which is going to bring sustainable happiness even in your life. So please join us. And half the police people came and joined the protesters. It's a very interesting thing that what creates a bridge between religions, between castes, between professions, and between ideologies. And these are some of the photographs from the turbulence that the conservationists, conservationists of animals, conservationists of trees, conservationists of grasslands and grazing grounds, they created around Delhi. I wonder how much of that is coming in a spiritual city like Varanasi. I'm sure very little. Justification in academic literature. It's not just on the streets, it's actually happening. This turbulence of ideas is happening even in the literature, academic literature. There are big researches going on. Robert Chambers and Vestiges of Natural History of Creation, 1944. Now, Robert Chambers was one person who challenged Darwin's survival of the fittest theory. Now, Darwin's survival of the fittest theory still got through and Robert Chambers was suppressed, simply because Robert Chambers wanted to say that survival of the fittest theory is going to lead the whole civilization into a very barbaric kind of a competition. And so Robert Chambers was suppressed. In fact, Robert Chambers' theory emerged in the 80s when some critiques of globalization were looking for literature to trounce the Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest, which actually goes at the back of the firm theory. F.W. Riggs, in Theory of Prismatic Society in 1956, American scholar born in China, looked around in Asia, wandered around in the West Asia. He went and looked at the rivers in the villages, and he said the best kind of management model is pre-existing the British colonial model in this country in the villages. Nobody looks at the village. And village has a perfect revenue system. They may be saying, they may be having a different terminology for the revenue system. They may be having a different metaphor for the use of, the whole transaction process that takes place amongst very, very illiterate people, basic people with basic resources, but nobody prefers to go and document that. Riggs tried to document that when he visited the villages in the Vidarbha region, where today you see that largest number of suicides of farmers is taking place because genetically modified BT cotton is being used over there. The philosophical question is, any form of speciesism is rooted in ignorance. What is this speciesism? Muslims would say, oh, we don't like dogs because dogs have this. Hindus would say, oh, we don't like pigs and dogs, keep them out because they're dirty creatures. Oh, we like cows, even though cows may be starving to death. They have no food to serve to the cow. Now, this kind of speciesism is also translated into human speciesism. Oh, you are a Dalit. Oh, you are from the Northeast. Oh, you see the number of cases which are taking place against Indians from the Northeast. And that new law is in the pipeline at the moment to protect countrymen from their own countrymen. So this kind of speciesism is translated into various forms which are serious governance problems. Krishna in Mahabharata was killed because he looked like a deer. So, it's all about knowledge asymmetry. We don't know much about the other, and because we don't know much about the other, we do not interact with everyone. Because we do not interact with everyone, we tend to destroy. Our existence is not just an Indian philosophy. Indians carry a lot of arrogance about their knowledge and about the Indian philosophy. I've been listening this since morning, and sometimes I do get very upset about it because there is nothing very special in the Indian philosophy. Yes, but if the Hindu way of life is deleted from the world map, it will have to be recreated because it is living within human existence. So, without calling it Indian, it's a philosophy that sweeps across all countries, all nations, and all societies. And I'm just having these two photographs here, one from England and one from America, where people are shouting slogans to protect animals, which an Indian would say, oh, cow belongs to India, so cow is ours, and they are there protecting for them. Environment and culture, they are interwoven into a system of management. And the moment management is disintegrated, disjuncted from environment and culture, it becomes sterile, of no use. Tree hugging, Chipko movement. You also know the tree sitters of the Californian Red Forest. And sacred groves. Then we move to environment and culture. Worshipping rivers is indigenous to this country. Glaciers and Inuits, they worship their own region in the Alaskan. And search for fundamental moral questions on existence is not just into Bhagavad Gita. It is also there in Bible, Matthew 25:26, Corinthians 12. If you look at that, you will find exactly what Bhagavad Gita has said. Henry Bugby's, you know, the simple authors like Henry Bugbey's Wilderness in America. If you haven't read it, you have missed out a big management question. And Laurel Kearns. Law and social justice. I have 2 minutes? Huh? Law and social justice. You see the lips of a woman. Supposing these were the lips attached to nature, what would nature speak to you? Because we have a face of a woman, you would say it's a beautiful face, beautiful lips, she's speaking something, listen to her. But who is more beautiful a woman than nature? And if nature speaks to you, what would the nature say? And that is what is taken out from Henry Bugbey's book. Wilderness, it would seem, may lie closer, the whence of speaking than to the thematization speaking about. He further writes, if wilderness may yet speak to us and place us as respondents in the ambience of respect for the wild, for nature, as primordial it must be liberated from further subsumption to human enterprise. The same thing that all the spiritual gurus have been saying since morning, this consumption pattern, we are subsidizing nature, environment for consumption pattern. So listen to nature. And why justice is difficult to implement. There are 3 reasons I have given here. One is that justice is interwoven with human nature. If human nature doesn't know anything, doesn't want to know anything, is embedded into arrogance, is embedded into ideology, is embedded into religion and caste, then justice cannot do anything. Thankfully, the previous Chief Justice of Supreme Court was good enough to give some very radical judgments in favor of the Dalit students. And they've gone down in history to improve the lives of a large number of Dalit students in the IITs as well as Jawaharlal Nehru University and various other big universities. Now, how many of us have the courage to walk out of our very trapped existence and talk about the whole humanity? Second reason why justice is not possible is because the knowledge of justice is created by very knowledgeable gurus. The knowledge of justice doesn't come out from indigenous wisdom. Amar Sen said, my grandmother knows best. Even though I've got the Nobel Prize, he made this remark in his opening speech that my grandmother knows best and whatever I have learned is from my grandmother. I still know that the old people in the family would say, oh, there's a circle around the moon, so there would be rain. And I've seen it in last so many years that there is always a rain when there is a circle around the moon. Now, this is all indigenous wisdom, and a large number of this indigenous wisdom is dead because we are creating management which suits the American paradigm. An American paradigm is a paradigm of loot, of subversion, because they were all outsiders who are now in America. And this is the last slide. Understanding nature, me. That's you know, the polar bears, the glaciers are melting, the Arctic is in a very bad shape. Beyond anthropogenic policies, the last of the management principle and the first where it should begin from is to kill anthropogenicity in management. And anthropogenicity is something that all of us have been talking about, you know, the spiritual gurus talked about. Walk out of this mere human existence, this body, this physical body. We have to walk out of this physical body and talk about larger humanity, other species, and especially the weaker ones. Thank you so much.